like most things the European 1% do when defending what they care about. They have no principles. This was very nicely said by President Bashar al-Assad on Syrian Teachers Day 2022.
وأثبت الغرب أنه لا يوجد لديه لا أصدقاء ولا يوجد لديه أعداء، يوجد لديه عدو واحد هو كل من يقف في وجه مصالحه المادية. فيعني لا الشيوعية ولا الإسلام ولا النازية ولا الصين ولا روسيا ولا غيرها هم أعداء للغرب. إذا كانوا يلبوا المصالح فهم أصدقاء، إذا كانوا يقفوا ضد المصالح فهم أعداء، يعني المبادئ صفر.
Money is not real. All it is a promise to later on pay something of real value. Everywhere in the world, people used to barter, trade in goods and services. People traded in all sorts of things, with the value and amounts changing, depending on what they needed that week and what they had to trade. But the really useful goods, like foodstuffs or hard-to-prepare building materials, are also hard to transport. So people started using representations of goods to trade with, no longer moving around a head of 30 goods, but a pocket full of 30 pieces of metal that represent a promise to deliver 30 goods later when asked to. But when those 30 pieces of metal become 50, 300, 3,000, it became difficult to carry them around and also to store safely where people couldn't steal them. People tried to replace 3,000 metal pieces with 1 bar of a really rare metal gold. But that still had the problem of people trying to steal the gold. So treasuries were invented, secure places you could put your gold. When you had completed a big purchase, you gave the buyer a carefully prepared piece of paper with a hard-to-copy sale on it, so they could then go to the treasury and get the gold. Often, the buyer never bothered to actually get the gold from the treasury. They just traded the piece of paper with someone else. And so, money was invented. Centralized treasuries were created by countries where people could store their bars of gold for a fee. And in return, the bank would give them banknotes, standardized money that promised to pay out gold when asked. Moving gold between bank treasuries is difficult. You have to transport it. So it is easier if banks start accepting each other's banknotes. Very quickly, a bank doesn't have to actually have any gold in its own treasury. The bank just has a stored collection of promises and records about where the gold really is. As long as everyone has confidence that banks will pay out gold when asked and agrees on how many banknotes represent 1 gold bar, the system works. This was the agreement that was made between governments in 1944 at Bretton Woods. To agree on the value of $1, the USA will promise to always convert $1 into the same amount of gold if someone asks for it. Someone, of course, being another government. Now this meant every country could trade freely, as long as they could get someone to agree to convert their local money into dollars, because dollars meant gold bars. The value of gold never changed. It hasn't changed in Europe for over 2,000 years. The value of currencies has changed, because 2 gold coins bought you a fine cloak as a Roman citizen, and 2 gold coins will buy you a fine suit in Rome today. But what if you need some short-term cash to buy something, a loan? Well, maybe a bank can help with that, because they just have these bars of gold sitting around in their treasury, doing nothing. To get you a loan, though, they won't give you gold bars. They will print banknotes instead that represent the gold bars. So, the bank swapped, say, 100 banknotes for 100 bars of gold for the first bank depositor. But now, because they want to lend 50 gold bars to someone else, they print another 50 banknotes and put a record in their treasury that they hold 50 gold bars. Now, there are now 150 banknotes in circulation, but still only 100 gold bars that actually exist. But it is not just the Bank of one country that is doing this. All countries are doing this. And if the Bank of one country is running short of gold bars, they will probably just borrow some from the bank of another country. But they won't be giving gold bars. They will be giving banknotes instead for a fee. Very quickly, there will be far more money in circulation than there are gold bars to pay for it. The whole system will only keep going as long as most people don't ask for all their gold back. And there are very well kept records of who owes gold to whom. In 1971, the USA's bank was running out of gold. People were asking for their dollars to be converted into gold. But the USA didn't have enough gold to print enough dollars to then pay its own energy bills, let alone enough gold to honor the Bretton Woods Agreement. So, the then USA President, Nixon, so he could print more money than he had gold, declared that for a short time, he would refuse to honor the Bretton Woods Agreement.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
The world panicked. Oil prices started fluctuating wildly because not only was there an oil embargo limiting supply, but the currency that oil was commonly paid in, dollars, was no longer trusted. The members of the oil price negotiation group, OPEC, effectively a cartel, were making massive amounts of money, but not necessarily real value, by selling their products at inflated prices of all sorts of currencies to everyone. In 1974, the USA stabilized their currency's devaluation by making an agreement with Saudi Arabia. The USA would henceforth always pay for Saudi Arabian oil in dollars, and in return, they would provide cheap loans and military equipment to enable Saudi Arabia to protect itself from Israel. This still wasn't enough. Most countries had a currency whose value was fluctuating freely on the exchange markets. But a lot of countries were experiencing severe money shortages, as there wasn't enough gold to share out the value with banknotes. And the inflation in the dollar meant that some countries' savings accounts were getting very low in value. This was through no fault of their own, as the USA kept trying to solve their own problems by printing money that people didn't really trust anymore. In 1978, the International Monetary Fund amended and restructured their loan system. The people setting it up declared that they were doing this to enable developing countries to have access to money through giving them loans. What actually happened was that the few countries that had enough pieces of paper to represent real value, now had a bank that they could trust to store their money in, and a bank that was guaranteed to give interest on their bank balance because of the loans the IMF made to help countries that the IMF had declared were developing. There was a very important rule though. No one gets to ask for money issued by the IMF to be converted into gold. Convert your banknotes into any other currency of banknote you like, but not actually gold. This rule, combined with the confidence in the value of the dollar from the agreement that the USA had made with Saudi Arabia, meant that most people asked for their loans to be made into dollars. The Bretton Woods agreement was cancelled. The value of any currency was now based on how confident people were that a country would be able to produce value to pay back its debt to the IMF. The value of a dollar wasn't guaranteed to be stable. No currency was now. But a barrel of oil was a barrel of oil. So the concept of the petrodollar was born. Instead of using a gold bar as a standard of value, the USA could use a barrel of oil, even if they didn't say this explicitly. And as long as the rate of oil production stayed relatively stable, so would the value of the dollar. So, think about this now. Imagine a country that develops a way to increase or decrease the amount of usable oil, refined oil that is sold on the market. This country could then affect the value of the dollar by just turning the oil refinery on or off. And imagine if the capacity of the refinery was so large that it could affect the worldwide production of refined oil by 1%. That country could effectively make the value of the dollar go up or down by up to 1%. For example, in the financial year of 2022, 1% of USA exports was about $3.2 billion, according to the US Department of Commerce. This means that the USA would have to control that refinery somehow, so that the USA could guarantee that they have enough dollars to pay their bills each month. The country that has this capability is Nigeria. And the Dangote oil refinery should start production in August 2023.
This is the Dangote investment on the Ibeju-Lekki axis of Lagos State. An investment of over $20 billion. The biggest private investment in Africa. Seated on a landmass of 2,635 hectares at the Dangote Industries Free Zone Enterprise. A project that once could only be imagined now stands firm as an economic game changer.
The 650,000 barrels per day that we've done is the largest single train, not only in Africa, in the world. You know, and we just wanted to make a point, and which we have now, achieved.
The USA does not have control over any shares in the refinery. The only country that does is Nigeria itself, through the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation.
As the Dangote Industries Limited continues to execute its vision, a vision invested in the future of Nigerians and Nigeria. There is only one goal: to grow the biggest human capital ever seen in this part of the world.
But remember what I said about currencies now only having any value when there is confidence in the country's ability to create value and pay their debts. One of the biggest levers that affects the value of the naira is the confidence other countries and foreign banks have in our country. As long as Nigeria is thought badly of, is considered risky, full of criminals, then the value of the naira relative to other currencies will remain low. Nigeria will pay extra to buy in refined oil in dollars, and any debt from the IMF that the country might take on to pay for big infrastructure projects will be at excessively large interest rates. And yes, Nigeria currently has so little local oil refining capacity. Our country has to convert our undervalued naira into dollars to then buy in refined oil products. Another problem that the Dangote refinery will solve. When the average Nigerian has little confidence in the ability of Nigeria as a country to generate wealth, this will affect the Nigerian government bond market. Governments all over the world sell bonds to their citizens as a way for them to get money to pay for infrastructure without involving the IMF. But the reputation of Nigeria as being a risky investment has restricted investment from our citizens in Nigeria and abroad. So our government has had to go to the IMF to get development loans instead. Most economists know just how much value Nigeria can create. It is the richest country on the continent. But foreign finance organizations having low confidence in Nigeria has meant we have consistently been in the top 30 high interest paying countries for loans from the IMF between 2010 and 2021. The USA has mostly been in the bottom 10 countries who pay the least. So think about it. Everyone is confident that Nigeria can create value. But the IMF consistently makes money for its biggest shareholders through lack of confidence in Nigeria. Nigeria's industrial development of the Dangote refinery is a threat to the USA being able to control both confidence in Nigeria and the value of the US dollar. And you think that the foreign media telling everyone the country is risky and dangerous is true. To ensure Nigeria remains a money-making opportunity for IMF investors, the foreign media messages must be repeated by Nigerians, so everyone who isn't in on the game loses confidence in our country. Thank you for watching. In the next part, I will be talking about the specific tricks that the foreign media play to create opportunities for their home economies to make money. Please support Nowogh Talks by hitting the like button and subscribing. Hit the notification button below and also leave a comment so that we can continue the discussion.